Hey everyone, back to you into today's video. We're doing the second seasonal model roundup for the winter of 2015-2016 today. So a pretty interesting and exciting day at Gazovitz. We've already done one seasonal model roundup video, which was back in September. There'll be one more to do after this, which will be at the end of November, of course. So, yeah, just 3 of these updates for this season. This is the middle of a trilogy. It's the second part of a trilogy of updates. We're going to get together 10 long-range seasonal models and see what they're showing for winter of 2015-2016. Last month's updates were model updates were very interesting. Several models were going or hinting at a colder than average winter, although there were other models going milder. But we did have a signal, really, and it's quite unusual for so early in the season, but we did have a signal last month for a cold winter in several of the long-range models. So we'll be having a look at some more today to see if there's any signal being maintained for a cold winter, or whether indeed we've gone to a different signal. We're one model down for this update. We haven't got the APEC. I've waited as long as I can to do the update, but unfortunately the APEC model, which is a collaboration of various Met agencies, it hasn't updated, sadly. So we're without that model for this update. I might update that on the blog in a few days' time when it does finally come out. But we're without that model for this update. Otherwise, we've got 10 more to be going on with, though. So, before I get on with that, just very quickly say about the ads. So, there's links to articles on all the pages of Gazovitz. So, have a browse of widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. You have to go for read the articles, and because you're going from Gazovitz to where that article is, we get a revenue fee on what you're doing, and thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most of the pages which open out within the content, and then when you've watched them, they'll close back up again. It's all helping to pay for Gazovitz.com, so thanks so much for getting involved, and thanks for doing that. You can find most of these long-range models with links to them on the links page. So not all there, I haven't got all of them on the links page, but most of them are there. So if you want to see these models for yourself, you're certainly able to do that. Just go to the links page. And just say enjoy the video. It's going to be a pretty long one again, as we always have longer ones on a Sunday. So get a comfy chair and a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. We're going to be here for a little while, but we're going to try and keep it under half an hour. And with that said, I'd better get on with it. So let's have a look at the first model. I'm going to start off with the Russian model. The first couple of models don't quite go to the full period. They don't quite go to the end of winter. This goes from November to January, as does the JMA. Otherwise, all the other models will go to the full winter period. Now, this is probability. So the red areas are where we've got an increased probability of a milder than average winter. The blue areas are where we've got an increased probability of a cold and average winter. You can see that the Russian model is generally indicating above average probability for a milder than average winter for the UK. So we're in those red colours there for the UK and for most of France and Central Western Europe as well. So a mild winter is being signalled by the Russian model. If we have a look at the rainfall anomaly, you can see that it's quite interesting actually, because it's going for a bit of a drier, a bit of a wetter than average winter. Actually, it's a bit drier than average out in the Atlantic, though, and up to the north. So that does indicate a little bit of high pressure, perhaps in this area. But for us and most of Central Western Europe, actually, a wetter than average winter is being seen here. So mild, unsettled, and a little bit wet. That's the signal for the November to January period, anyway, from Russia. As I say, this doesn't quite cover the full winter period. We'll get that for next month's third and final update. Excuse me. The JMA next, we're going to have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly for the coming 3 months, November to January again. On this chart, we're in this very far top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. And what the model is seeing for the coming 3 months is an anomalous trough of low pressure to be in the Atlantic, and bringing a jet stream through rather like that as well. So it's an unsettled signal for November to January. The temperature anomaly, which we can see here, is coming out a bit cooler than average in the north, near normal, to maybe a little bit milder than average down in the south. The precipitation anomaly, hardly surprising, with a trough of low pressure close to the country, coming out wetter than average again, so 2 models so far, and both of them going for a wetter than average winter. And the wind arrows, I'm not quite sure if you can make this out, but the general direction is sort of west to maybe a little bit northwesterly with the wind arrow. So maybe hints of cold zonality coming through, which perhaps explains, despite the fact it's a fairly Atlantic-driven winter, and it's not all that excited with the temperatures. We've got this above average rainfall. It's probably because we're bringing more sort of northwesterly flows through as opposed to southwesterly. So sort of polar maritime airstreams perhaps dominating the November to January period anyway, as opposed to sort of tropical maritime. Maybe reaching a little bit, actually, trying to decipher that. But anyway, an unsettled winter, or early winter, November to January, being signalled from the JMA. The rest of the models that we look at are going to cover the full winter period. The JMA and the Russian models will cover the entire winter period as we get through to next month's third and final seasonal model roundup video for winter of 2015-2016. Right, let's go on and have a look at the Brazilian model. I'm going to start off with 500 millibar heights, and these are covering the full winter period now. This is December to February. Always different with these ones. Blue is extrapolating to high pressure, and orange, yellow and red are extrapolating to low pressure. Most other models, all other models, do it the other way round. This one, for some reason, tries to catch us out a little bit. So what the model is seeing is that we've got an anomalous trough of low pressure set across Russia, or western Russia, and into Scandinavia. It's also indicating a ridge here through the central bowl of the Mediterranean, and possibly extending some sort of Atlantic ridge up to there as well. So it's quite a complicated pattern, but overall fairly chilly pattern, I would think, with this one. I would imagine we could be bringing down fairly regularly sort of northerly, northwesterly influences. In a lot of ways it could be similar to the JMA actually, although they're different in how they're setting this up. Nowhere near as much troughiness around the UK as we see on the JMA, but both of them could be sort of similar in bringing down sort of polar maritime, fairly cool zonal airstreams, perhaps. We need to get rid of that ridge across the central bowl of the Mediterranean to really set up a cold pattern. So this isn't a definitively cold pattern by any means, but it could be a little bit cooler than average. Actually, the temperature normally does reflect that. It's coming out near normal with the temperatures there across the British Isles, but that's a little bit cool actually for these charts. Normally they do err on the side of warmer than average, so it's not going for a particularly warm winter, particularly mild winter by any means. I would think that does probably bring us just about into a cooler than average winter on this one. Also coming out a bit wetter than average as well, and the reason for that is of course that we've got the trough sitting to the east and northeast of the country. Notice quite a lot of high pressure, or dry than average indicates quite a lot of high pressure in the central part of the Atlantic, but it does go down to Spain as well, so I think the jet stream is probably doing something like that really. It is westerly, it's off the Atlantic, so it's not going to be a easterly winter if this comes off. Could be a little bit cool at times, but not really a cold signal. Hugues Vandel next, our good friend Hugues Vandel, and this is the map that Hugues has drawn up, created, based on sea surface temperature analogues. So Hugues looked at the sea surface temperature anomalies in September, and then from there created an analog based forecast going forwards. Okay, it's a little bit complicated to explain that, but essentially what Hugues is seeing is that we've got a lot of red here around the south of Greenland and going into Newfoundland and Canada. We've got this deep trough of low pressure in the Pacific and the south of America. And then for us, we're in a little bit of a no man's land, really. It looks like we've got some sort of trough feature to the south and to the southeast of us. And it's a little bit difficult to work out exactly what's going on there, but we've definitely got a southerly tracking jet stream, and we could be pulling down some cooler air from the northwest with that once again. But the temperature anomaly is only coming out, well, it's coming out ever so slightly above average, really, near normal to slightly above average with those temperature anomalies. Notice a cold winter being signalled for much of the south and east of America. But Hoog is seeing temperature anomalies to be near normal for us, and this has actually gone a bit cooler compared to what Hoog was going for a couple of months ago when he was seeing a very mild winter. We have gradually cooled those anomalies down a little bit, although again by no means are we indicating colder than an average winter with this one. The rainfall anomaly looks like this, so we're coming out a bit wetter than average in the north, near normal elsewhere. You can see evidence of that southerly tracking jet stream, where we've got all these wetter than average anomalies down here to the south. Drier than average through much of the northern part of the Atlantic. So it's a rather complicated pattern, this, and the position of this ridging does imply that at the very least we should be pulling in some cooler air again from a north or northwesterly type direction. But once again, I have to emphasise this isn't signalling sort of a massive block feature to set up around Greenland or Iceland or Scandinavia and a severely cold winter, but perhaps just a little bit cooler with those zonal westerlies. Very similar from NASA as well. Now, this is one of the models that was going for colder than average winter last month. It's sort of the same signal, but the centre of the ridging is a little bit more towards Canada, if anything, as opposed to Greenland. Again, there's that trough to the south and east of America. For us, we're within near normal height, so again, very, very difficult to decipher quite what all of this means for us in terms of a pressure distribution. But in terms of the temperature anomaly, it's again close to average, but most of Europe actually coming out milder than average. So this has corrected a little bit from last month's signal, which was going for slightly colder than average winter. Now we're sort of erring on the side of slightly milder than average. Notice most of southern, central, East America getting a cold winter once again. The precipitation anomaly, which we can see just here, again very close to average, but maybe into being a little bit wetter than average to the south, but there is a great deal in it. Notice we've got dry than average precipitation anomalies again in the north, so probably hinting at some sort of high pressure there, and going over to there with low pressure coming through here. So there's definitely a southerly tracking jet stream going on. It's just that we haven't really got northern blocking, not really hooking up northern blocking. So what's probably likely to happen is that we tend to bring down northwesterly to northerly type winds as opposed to being able to get a proper easterly or northeasterly setting in. It could be cool at times with this, but it isn't, again, a signal for an especially cold winter. Now, CFS V2 next, and you know what the CFS has been doing, and it's still doing it. So this is the 700 millibar height anomaly for December, January and February, showing a trough of low pressure to the west. A very strong ridge extending up from North Africa into the Central Med. So what this does, it does that. It sends the jet stream and the flow into the southwest, pumps up very mild air out of the tropical Atlantic. I've explained this, or I did explain this in the CFS 6 months look ahead, but I think we did. Was it last month? I can't quite remember. All these updates are sort of crowding in on me a little bit, but I think it was last week that we did the CFS 6 months look ahead, and it was sort of the idea that we've got a very mild winter going on. CFS hasn't backed off from that idea yet, so this is the temperature anomaly. It's a bit of a shocker. This is for the winter, and the whole of Europe is bathed in very mild air. An exceptionally mild winter is being predicted by the CFS V2 for winter of 2015-2016, and the rainfall anomaly is coming out wetter than average for most parts of Europe as well. So a very mild, exceptionally mild, but also wet winter is the signal. Atlantic driven winter with air from the tropical Atlantic. That's the signal from CFS V2. Have a look at the CAN-SIPs next. This is the Canadian model. So these are temperature anomalies first, but we haven't got them in a three monthly anomaly. We've got these in separate months. So we start off with the temperature anomaly for December, coming out colder than average, quite interestingly. We go through to January, and we get a bit of a flip in January where it turns milder than average, and then we move through to February, and we go a bit cooler again in February. So a bit of a chopping and changing winter. By the way, notice how severely cold most of America and Canada is in February. But for us, a bit of a chopping and changing winter, starting off cold for December, going fairly mild for January, then going cold again, or cooler again for February. And I can tell you that does extend into March as well, those cold temperatures. Actually, the cold deepens as we get through into March. The precipitation anomaly looking drier than average to the north and west, so we've got ridging here, and a trough of low pressure to the south, and wetter than average conditions to the south of the country, means that we probably bring in northerly, northeasterlies. That's a cold signal for December. If you want a cold start to winter anyway, that is the best sort of chart that we've seen so far. Very similar as we go through into January, although the ridge is a little bit more centred in the middle part of the Atlantic, which means we bring more sort of Atlantic influences like that. So more of an Atlantic-driven month as we go through into January. Again, but not particularly a wet signal. And then we go through into February, and the ridge builds in very close to the country, but it is centred a little bit to the north. So this, and we've also got a bit of ridging over Scandinavia. So this probably does allow, excuse me, winds to go a bit easterly or northeasterly. This is the best we've seen so far. The CAN-SIPs. It's the best we've seen so far if you want a colder than average winter. Beijing Climate Centre next. Now, this is quite interesting because last month the Beijing Climate Centre was going for quite a mild winter, but I said it wouldn't take all that much of an adjustment to start to shift us towards a colder winter pattern. And look at this. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly for the winter. This is going from December to February, and it has shifted quite a bit actually. It is showing an anomalous ridge to be centred somewhere to the south of Greenland. It's trying to place a trough right over the top of the UK. Now, if you know how to read these charts, you'll know that this could be a cold signal. You would probably be expecting to entrench cold air from the north, possibly even from the northeast, into this trough of low pressure. But if I show you the temperature anomaly for the winter, actually it's not that cold. It's coming out more or less a little bit milder than average. So that's a pretty poor temperature anomaly given the 500 millibar height anomaly that the model is going for. What I can tell you with the Beijing Climate Centre is that it's seeing a progression. I'm not going to show you the earlier charts, but what it's doing is for the early part of winter, it has a very typical mild setup. I mean, it progresses so that we get to this point, December to February, with an anomaly anyway, a pressure anomaly. Again, I'll remind you what it looks like. This pressure anomaly, it progresses to this, and this probably brings us a colder, later winter pattern. So the reason the temperature anomaly here is probably close to average is that, you've got to remember, it's a 3-monthly period, so it could be encompassing a very mild start to the winter and then getting progressively colder. So reading between the lines, and very often you do have to read between the lines with these long-range models, I think this is suggesting a mild start to the winter and then probably going colder later on, with February offering the best chance of a colder than average month in this winter. Probably wouldn't be enough to create an overall colder than average winter unless it was supremely cold. But enough to sort of pull the temperature anomaly down a little bit, and probably that would be a colder than average month in February. A little bit complicated to describe this, so I hope I'm doing it okay. The point I'm trying to get across with that. The rainfall anomaly is coming out wetter than average, hardly surprised because it's placing a trough right over the top of the UK, and that probably encompasses quite a westerly, mild early winter, and then going colder, but still with a trough in the later winter period. So it could be really quite a wet winter indeed if Beijing Climate Centre is right. Finally, or not finally, we're second from last. Got the UK Met to after this, but this is the Jamstec IOD, and we're coming out with a cooler than average winter, again colder than average, but most of Europe is coming out exceptionally mild, so I can't really explain quite what's going on there, why the UK and Scandinavia just perched on this northwestern part of Europe is coming out colder than average, but it is going for below average temperatures in any case. The precipitation anomaly looking like this, so we're wetter than average to the south and a bit drier than average to the north. Could be some sort of northern blocking going on up there, but given how mild most of Europe is, maybe what we're doing here is bringing down sort of a northwesterly type flow again, so that sort of seems to play within a lot of these models. I think that we maybe bring down some sort of a northwesterly polar maritime cold zonal type flow this winter. But in any case, it is still seeing the chance of a colder than average winter. Finally, we're at the end now, and it's the UK Met Office. I want to show you the progression of these charts. So this is the sea level pressure anomaly for November to January. And what we're seeing here is that we've got a lot of blue to the north, so it's a westerly setup with jet stream going like that, ridging down to the south as we're going through this early winter period. But as we get through to the next sea level pressure chart, we see signs of a change, ridging beginning to take place through the middle part of the Atlantic, trough of low pressure to the east and the northeast, with the jet stream starting to go a bit like that. So we're going more northwest to southeast with the jet stream for the period from this is December through to February, so this is for the actual winter period. But the next chart on, which takes us to the late winter period, this is going from January to March. Look at this, a lot of northern blocking suddenly appearing to the south of Greenland and around ice, so lots of high pressure up there, this deep trough just here, and this would open the door, I think, to the chance of northerly and northeasterly type influences. So again, it's a progressive pattern through the winter. We're starting off very westerly, very zonal, probably very mild, and we're progressing to a more block pattern as we go along, and that's in line, I think, with what the Jamstec and also what the Beijing Climate Centre is seeing. So a couple of these models, and then at the better end of these models, are seeing sort of a progressive pattern taking place through the winter, probably through some sort of sudden stratospheric warming occurring in the middle part of the winter, say around January. That leads us into a more blocked February and March, with a better prospect of cold in the late winter. The temperature anomaly for the winter is coming out colder than average. Not quite sure about that. And the precipitation anomaly coming out a bit wetter than average. Again, you notice drier than average out here through the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. So, well, that's it. That's 10 models, and they're a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not sure the signal is quite as strong as we had it last month for a colder than average winter, but nevertheless, there are still quite a few models here that are going cooler than average, not desperately cold, but sort of hinting maybe at cold zonal flows. And then we've got these models that we've looked at the end, UK Met, Beijing Climate Centre, and possibly the Jamstec as well, which is going for a more of a progressive pattern, which is that we start off with very westerly, very mild, and we sort of progress to a more blocked, possibly colder pattern for the late winter period. It's all rather confusing, I must admit, but I think reading between the lines, that is where the models are going this month. I can tell you about the E70UF. I can't show you it, but I've had a look at the E70UF, and I can tell you that that model also is seeing the chance of sort of a progressive pattern with more block conditions late winter. There's also another model from Australia where the access to that model is restricted, unfortunately, so they haven't let me use it for the videos, unfortunately, but I have been keeping an eye on it, and that is also going for this idea of a progressive pattern. So I think that's where we're at with this month's update, which is that either we're going to get sort of cool zonality, that's one option that's at play in a lot of these models, or we start off with a very mild zonal pattern, and then we sort of settle into a progressively colder and more block pattern for the later part of the winter. So it's all very interesting still. Excuse me. And if you want a cold winter with some snow, it's by no means off the table that something quite interesting, particularly for the late winter period, could happen for this winter. So that's the Season 1 roundup done for this month. Got one more to go next month. Remember, all of these seasonal model updates are eventually going to combine with all of the other winter updates that we're doing. It'll all be combined and put together for the GaussWeatherInch.com Winter 2015-2016 forecast, which will be released on Tuesday, the 1st of December. Talking of a winter update, because we've had a look at models today, I haven't done a winter update. So on the blog tonight, or late this afternoon, this evening, I'll be having a very quick look at what the solar activity has been doing over the past week. Also have a look at how the snow cover has progressed over the past week across Russia compared to last week. So come back to that on the blog tonight. That's all for now. How long have we been going on for? 25 minutes. I've managed to keep it under half an hour. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.